You're listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast, hosted by Zach Bechtold and Matt Franks. If you'd like to learn more about the Bearded Theologians, you can go online at beardedtheologians.com, where we have past podcasts, blogs, and a couple items for sale. So check us out, beardedtheologians.com. Thank you for listening, and enjoy this week's show.
You're listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast, hosted by Matt Franks
and Zach Bechtold.
So this week on the podcast, we're going to do something we really haven't done ever. We've talked about the question. We've thrown the question out there. We've never answered the question. It's that traditional Wesleyan question of, how is it with your soul, Zach?
Oh, that was the question.
That was the question. Yes.
How is it with your soul? Yeah, no, it's a traditional Wesley question that he asked everybody that he came in contact with and met with on any kind of basis, right? And it's one that we ask in our circles quite a bit. But like Matt said, I don't know that it's one that we answer often because it's a hard question. If we're honest and vulnerable, we answer it differently than if we are guarded and if we're just guarded, right? And so yeah, how is it with my soul? My soul's good. It's tired. I'll be very honest in that. But it's tired in a really good way. And yeah, my soul is well. Looking at the last year, reflecting upon that in the last 6 months, in moving and having that transition and being briefly living closer to Matt than ever, and then probably pulling that rug out from under both of us. Always fun. But no, in a moving year, when we make those transitions, it's hard. It's hard on us as pastors. It's hard on us as families to pick up and move, to settle into a new community, to settle into a new church and the life of that church. And yeah, I gotta say my soul is good and refreshed and excited about the things that are before us, both personally and in ministry, in a really good way. And like I said, it's tired a little bit, but it's a good tired. I'm not bored right now, which there are days that I wish I was had a little time to be bored. But yeah, no, I'm really, really excited about what is going on, yeah, in my family, in my personal life, but and how God is moving through that and the church. Just really, really exciting, soul-filling times right now. And so yeah, I'm comfortable saying that my soul's tired, but also really excited about being tired. And excited about what's before us. So yeah, Matt, how is it with your soul?
I feel like that's a very loaded question these days.
I think it's a loaded question anytime.
Well, yeah, and I think that's something to recognize. Like, that's why the vulnerability of that question is so much, is because it does kind of like, kind of set you back a little bit when you really think about that. When I threw that out there, I was like, oh, we'll see how this goes. And then as I started thinking about it, I was like, oh man, like, I think what really comes to mind is a little bit of angst with what all I've got going on. I'm like you, we've moved into a new place, a whole new time zone, new climate. I mean, like, it's hard for me to see when they're having 68-degree weather back in Oklahoma, and I'm like negative whatever, that snow that hasn't ever left, because I've been told a lot of times that it doesn't do this here. And so I'm like, but it did.
But it did. This is normal.
And then the hope of the end of a journey of a really a 3.5-year battle of being in chronic pain in my hips and having a new hip, and what that's going to partake, and the stresses that come with that after being down for 2 weeks and being away from family and people. That's just not fun. And so there's some angst there. I think spiritually, if I process it spiritually, I'm in the same boat as you. I'm tired in a healthy way, but I'm also just trying to get to February 26th. That way we can hit the road, and then I can get to Tulsa and have the hip replacement so I can move forward. But until that time, like you and I were talking about before the podcast, like I don't have room for air or for other things that seem to keep coming up. And so it's just a matter of maintaining. You and I talk a lot about healthy boundaries and maintaining those and letting people know that, no, I don't answer emails on Saturday. Even if I look at it, I'm still not going to answer it till probably Monday, because Sunday is worship and that's all I spend my energy on. And I think that, to me, like when we think about this question, it allows us to look at our boundaries and ask ourselves, have we allowed our boundaries to be healthy, or have we violated our boundaries? And I can definitely, as I'm thinking about this, like there are some spaces that I have some room for improvement, and I know that. There are some spaces that I know I'm angsty, and what's the cause of, like, I know the cause of that. It's just like I just had my my psych evaluation for the Board of Ordained Ministry for transfer, and it was funny that like everything that was pointing towards angst or stress like the follow up was like, he understands he's having surgery and that this is going to change, like this is causing this. My therapist will tell you the same thing, that the last couple of years I've been having to deal with that chronic pain and what that brings forth. And I think the reasons why I love this question, it's a great question. It allows us to self-reflect. And when you do it with a group like this, or even in a group setting, if you have an accountability group, it can maybe draw out some opportunities for people to help, or say, hey, I can handle that for you. And I think that that's necessary. I think far too often we forget that that's an important part of discipleship, is that sense of accountability and being there for one another. I think when we use the term discipleship, we just think studies, when really in discipleship, it's about relationships and relationship building with yourself and others and God. And that it's not just about doing a study, that it is really about holding one accountable for their actions or inactions, and then also willing to step up for your neighbor, whatever that may mean.
Yeah. No, and this is the equivalent question, right, that we would ask, maybe not in the church circle. How you doing? Right? Yeah. Hey, how are you? Right? And I'm willing to bet 99.9% of the time we don't answer that question honestly. Right. And so there's something different in framing it the way of, how is it with your soul? I don't know that I've ever seen this question asked, physically seen it asked, that the room didn't just let out a sigh of, yeah, okay, I got to sit with this question for a second, right? Because it's different when you begin to ask, how is it with your soul, than just saying, hey, how you doing? Although they're the same question, they're different questions, right?
Yeah.
How is it with your soul really doesn't leave a lot of room to not be vulnerable, to not be honest. We can certainly do it just like we do with, hey, how are you? Hey, I'm great. Life's good. But when we sit with it, even just later on, and reflect upon that answer, the truth sets in, right? Reality sets in, and we can be honest with ourselves, even if we're alone, of, yeah, no, my soul isn't great. My soul's tired. My soul's hurt. My soul's wounded. Or, yeah, my soul is really enlivened right now, right? There's a lot that we can do with this question, and wrestle with the tension between joy and celebrations, and anxieties and heartaches, and all of the things. Those all sit and rest in our souls together. And for me, I think that's what this question does. It allows us permission to sit in kind of that wandering, kind of sit in that reality of who we are, and who God's created us to be and feel, and all of the human nature that we have. I think that question begins to pull it out of us, and maybe help us in a really healthy spiritual way to wrestle with some things and to celebrate some other stuff. And yeah, probably not a question we ask near often enough, even whether it's in groups or just waking up in the day and asking ourselves that question, how is it with my soul today? And as we ponder life over our cup of coffee, how do we tackle the day, right? And how can we do it in a way that we man, my soul's hurting today. How do we set a boundary to help that? I don't know. There's a lot there. Wesley leaves us with probably a whole lot more questions than we have answers. And I think this is why, because he asked great questions.
Well, I think that's, we obviously can say that's what a great teacher does.
Sure.
But I also think too, when we think about this question, there is that sense, you brought it out, that sense of accountability, that sense of vulnerability. Because when someone asks you how you're doing, my response is usually, do you want the real story? Do you want the other story? Because
Yeah.
I got another
What do you want me to say
story.
here?
I mean, because I think that if you are a person that does do that, is willing to share, some people are just put off by it. And so then you just kind of mask what's going on with a false sense of self. And
Right.
if we were, doing the things that we should be doing of accountability and things like that, then that should be something that needs to be addressed. That question is something that desperately needs to be addressed. And because it brings health, like you can find help, or someone can say, well, I hear you're dealing with this. Like, I've dealt with this before. Here's how I dealt with it. Or, I don't know, but so-and-so does. And I think that that's in those spaces of vulnerability, those spaces of accountability and care, genuine care for one another, you can find that space fairly easily and be there and be a presence, be that loving presence that we're called to be. And I think far too often we don't do that. And so I think that that's just a good place to reflect. And it is like, if you've got a group of people that you can have those conversations with, then I think it's a great question to incorporate into your whatever it is, however you're set up. And I think that that's a good place to at least for me to land. I don't know about you. How do you feel?
No, yeah, I think so. I think you're exactly right. It as opposed to other questions we ask, hey, how are you? How's it going? Just things that don't really warrant an answer, right? An honest answer. It's I think when we ask those types of questions, I don't know that we're looking for an honest answer all the time, right?
Yeah.
But with this one, how is it with your soul? It's asking for an answer from everybody, from the person asking it to the person hearing it. It's asking for an answer from all of us, and it brings us into that community and into really honest and vulnerable and vibrant community. This is how we get to know each other, by sharing our stories and our hurts and pains and celebrations. It's how we you're exactly right. It's how we make disciples. It's how we are disciples, that we engage in community like this, in relationship of vulnerability and honesty and just being people, right? I think sometimes we put too much armor on, right? We're too guarded at times, and rightfully so. We need to be in moments, but finding those trusted people that you can just be you, I think is key to answering this question, but also asking it. So yeah, that's where I'd land.
Yeah. And so I think, that's definitely some things to think about, especially, as we get closer to pitchers and catchers reporting, being in the right frame of mind for baseball season is key, but also in our spiritual lives, really reflecting and having a sense of self and connection to God and neighbor is key. So we want to thank you for listening today. Here at the Bearded Theologians, you can find out about us online at beardedtheologians.com. We've got all sorts of great things of past podcasts, items to buy, and all that great stuff. And so you can find us online at beardedtheologians.com. And so for the podcast this week, we send you off. I didn't want to double Bearded Theologians because I just felt like that was weird.
It was about to become a drinking game.
Yes. Check us out, connect with us for the Bearded Theologians. I'm Matt Franks.
I'm Zach Bechtold. Thanks for checking us out.
I want you to subscribe and like this video and push that thumbs up.
Thank you for listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share on all social media outlets. You You can check out old episodes and more information at beardedtheologians.com. Thanks for checking us out.